Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, hello. It's great to be here today. This is a bonus episode. I'm so excited and bringing back Dennis Dowdell. And Dennis has quite the story. I've known Dennis for quite a while. I met him, of course, through my husband, and we've known each other. And you have a wonderful story and a brand new book, Maximizing You. And that's really fun to be able to bring forward and just kind of some of the reasons that you wrote it, but it's just great to be here today. And I focus mostly with people at mid-career, the halftime of life, and what are you going to do next? And Dennis has a what next right now. So it's kind of fun to hear from you. Thank you for being with me today, Dennis.
Well, listen, just thanks so much for having me. Actually, I'm a little past the halftime part, So, but know what it is just shows that it's never too late.
It's never too late. No, it's not, and that is from many of my interviews that I have. I usually just bring in one interview a month, but now I'm starting to add some bonus episodes. But that's the message over and over and over. It's never too late. It's never too late. And that's such an encouragement for people. So if people have not heard of you, Dennis, you have quite the story. So this is why I want you to review just briefly. I mean, you came from a bus driver, and I mean, you managed 250,000 people. So we want to know a little bit of your story.
Well, I appreciate it. It's interesting because, graduated from high school with a 1.78 average, right? Went into college, passed on probation. So I wasn't necessarily a good student of classes or lectures, but I think I've always been a student of life. And so that's always been real important to me. And so when I got out of college, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And I just did some odd things because I didn't want to get involved in a job and just be a slave to a job for the rest of my life. I wanted to do something that had a little purpose. I wanted to have meaning. I wanted to be able to make a difference for people. And when I was coming up on my 30th birthday, I started thinking, I better get busy here.
Some of us have had kids like that.
I better start the career before it's finished, right? So, and so I spent some time looking, and for a career that would be something that I could be excited about, and something that would allow me to travel, because I wanted to be able to make a difference for people. I at the current time I had been working with some college kids, doing some mentoring, discipling, but I wanted to be able to travel. I mean, driving a school bus was great, but it just kind of took me around town, and there was no real future in it. So I thought, I've got to find something. And as I searched around, I stumbled across a little startup company called it was a multi-level company. Nothing, something I knew nothing really about. And I went up and I heard about the product. I said, okay, that makes sense. I mean, if people can feel good, have more energy, get healthy, okay, that's good. I can get behind that. But then they start drawing these squares and circles, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is some kind of sales. I hate sales. I think I don't like sales, don't want sales. I'm not doing this. No sales, I'm out of here. Fortunately for me, that night, the room was so crowded, I couldn't get out without being late. Because at the last portion of that presentation, the founder of the company said, gang, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go out and we're going to make a difference. Customer by customer, city by city, state by state, country by country, we're going around the world. And I thought, okay, wait a second. Make a difference, travel the world. Okay, now, maybe I didn't hear something, right? And so I stayed afterward because I had to figure out, okay, now, how does this work? And what was so exciting for me is because I realized, and it was one of those little turning points in my big picture with respect to what I could do with my life. And the fact is that, the founder of the company said, you're working with college kids. And I said, yeah. And he said, what do you do with them? And I said, well, I just help them to get a bigger picture on life and give them a different perspective and help them to, to deal with problems. I mean, you got, the financial problems, you got, they got the freshman 15, they got family problems, relation problems, all these different things. And he said, well, great. And he says, then you don't have to sell anything. And I said, what are you talking about? He says, you just have a couple more problems that you can solve. It's like somebody flipped the switch. I said, that's it. I don't ever have to sell anything. All I have to do is help people solve problems they have up to that point in time never been able to solve. And that's pretty much what I was trying to do with them anyway. And so it just kind of got me started. And so when I realized that it was that type of a concept, and that all I had to do is do that with people and then duplicate the process. And so that's really what got me started. And I literally went from city to city. Of course, you got to understand, this is back in 1980. There were no cell phones, no computers.
Right.
And so we literally went from city to city and then state to state. And I literally started going from country to country to country. And now I've been to over 51 countries, 5 different continents. And when you watch the impact of what's happened with people's lives as a result of your input, there's no greater joy than that. And so that's really what it's been for me. It's just, it literally is just making that difference. I think it's, people are always wanting to be successful. I never really had a goal of being successful. For me, I wanted to be significant. Mm-hmm. And I got that early on in my life. Because most people are in this survival mode, they're going, day to day, month to month. And, but I discovered if you could learn to serve people and help them get what they want, as Jim Rohn would say, when you help enough, or Zig Ziglar, he says, you help enough people get what they want, you get everything that you want.
Right.
And that was one of those principles that locked in, that applied to everything that I was doing. And so that's really what it was. And so all I had to do is be a servant. I have, one of my principles, he who serves the many earns the money and a reputation. And so we could do that and we could help them. And then the success is just the result of being a good servant, which allows you then to become significant, because the success isn't what I do. The success is what other people do as a result of what I do. And there's so much more joy in that. I mean, listen, with the work that you've done and the mentoring and the teaching and the tutoring, you got it. You already know that stuff. But when one of your students, puts on a recital and they get a standing ovation, I mean, who gets greater joy out of that? You or them?
Yeah, it's like watching your kids and you're going, their launch. Oh, they're doing well. They're doing, it's all of that, or students, or wherever we're, whoever we're focused on. But it is a joy of just seeing people move ahead. And part of the joy is to see people actually just take action, because there's so many that are stuck in fear. They don't believe in themselves. They don't believe what they have inside, like that hero inside. They don't believe that there is that.
I love that, by the way.
Yeah.
That was great.
I wrote the song first. So, but it's a real calling for people just to not discount who they are, no matter what time of life you are at. Again, whether you're at the last third, I mean, who knows, with all of this longevity now, who knows how long.
That's right.
I'd love to work clear through my 80s. We'll see if I my mind holds up and everything else. I think the body might, but we'll see what happens with everything.
We just have to make sure that we feed the mind as well as we feed the body.
Exactly.
And when we do that, I mean, the mind it's amazing. It's a continual growth process. And, as we know, I mean, if the truth be it, as they say, that we only use this small percentage, that means we've got a lot to fill up.
Yes.
And we've got a lot to activate.
Yes.
And I think it's just, sometimes we get bombarded with the I can'ts and stuff, and then those things stick with us. And I think it's why one of the things that we need to do as much as possible is to be able to just encouraging people. People say, why? I say, why not? Listen, what's to stop you? When you look at who was it, Colonel Sanders started his KFC at 67. Sam Walton started Walmart at 58. And look at, it's just amazing when you see what happens. So the potential is there. Right. And I think that's something that's so valuable is when you can begin to open people's eyes to their uniqueness. And when they understand how unique they are, then it opens the door for them to see the potential of what they can do with their uniqueness, because nobody on the planet is like anybody else. And we each have something to contribute. Our uniqueness is basically what helps to determine our contribution. Listen, I'm coming in, finishing up my 73rd year here. Right. And so now I'm starting something totally brand new, completely out of my category, completely, another world, going on here. Right. But I realize that, here's an opportunity and to be able to make another contribution besides just from the business that I've developed over the last 40 years. Right. And so I think that's so valuable. In fact, my family, it's kind of interesting. They know what I've done, but they ain't got a clue how I did it. They didn't. And I learned early on, I had the founder of our company who was a tremendous mentor. And I think that's real important. It's always to have somebody to encourage you, to guide you, somebody who's been there before. Because, listen, how much is really new? Listen, my book, there's nothing new in that book. Right. Everything, I stole all of it. When I do my messages and seminars, I say, hey, this is great stuff, isn't it? And everybody goes, oh, that's kind of interesting. He's been kind of humble before. Now what's he talking about? And I said, listen, take a note. Only steal the good stuff. Because, listen, it's just our way of sharing it, our perspective of the same principles can click. You just never know that one time, that one thing said, and all of a sudden somebody says, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. If he can start at 73, I can start at 53, Yes. So it just is so valuable, to see. And to be honest with you, I've got to remind myself of a lot of these things, because, there's so many powerful, especially in the personal development field. Right. Listen, you're involved with that. So, listen, it's massive out there, right? Yeah. And you say, well, listen, so who am I? What do I have to contribute? Mm-hmm. I have to contribute. I have my uniqueness to contribute. I have my perspective, because I'm going to see things and hear things and look at and view things from a different perspective that might just be the thing that's going to allow somebody to say, hey, me too.
Right. Yeah, that is so true, Dennis. You have a different way of communicating and of being able to relate a message. And I think that's extremely important. And for each person to realize you have that uniqueness and own that uniqueness. And there's so many, it's a world of clones, and especially I know you're entering into the speaking field a little bit more, the writing, because you've done your book. And but there's a world of clones of just copying what other people are doing, and people have copied exactly what I've done. They've copied a book title. They've done other, just amazing.
Something. Think about it though, Deb. Jim Rohn said there's no greater compliment than when somebody uses your name, your title, your phrase, your words in their testimony. And I'm thinking, wow, how great can that be?
Because I hit on something that's relevant. How about that? But and I've been in a field in the arts for so long that, everybody's, they'll steal your soles of your shoes off you, but they'll copy something.
I've heard.
Yeah. It's really like that. But anyway, it's a part of owning our uniqueness and see what I know that, well, you might copy that one thing, but I've got so much more, and there's so much more to be had. And this creative, that doesn't end there. That was a couple books ago, so it doesn't end there. We can't just say, oh no, we have to be able to keep going.
Deb, I'll tell you something. And just in your saying that, just reminded me that, it's so much. And in fact, the very first principle upon which every other principle in the book and in life really needs to build upon is that simple principle that I got from Rick Warren that said, it's not about you. And the thing is that it really isn't. So somebody takes something or do something like of mine. I mean, I'm just thinking, number one, I think it's an honor. I must have, like you said, I must have been on track, must be relevant.
Yeah.
Somebody else must want to hear it, so, okay, I better say it again.
Yeah. Right.
Better do more of it. But when we realize that it really isn't about us, I mean, listen, your talent and skills my mind short circuits. It just totally, Carrie and I, we sit here, we look at, the things you've done and the things that you're currently doing. And I'm thinking, holy mackerel, when does she breathe? I'm trying to figure, but all of those talent, skills, and abilities, they're not for us. See, that's the lie. That's the deception of the world, is that we've got all these things to make me look good. The point is I've got all my talents, all my skills and abilities, my learning, all of that. It's not for me. It's a part of my character. It's a part of my tool belt to help me equip other people to maximize their own potential. It's all for other people. Everything we do is for other people. That's why he who serves the many earns the money, earns the reputation. Mm-hmm. It's not what I do. It's what others do as a result of what I do. The greatest success in my business. Listen, in my company, I've got over 270 people are in the top 1% of the company worldwide. Okay. Wow. And that's huge. Yes. Okay. Over 4 million people. Okay. So, but when I look at that, there's people who do much better than I do in my own business, right? And people say, does that bother you? And I said, does it bother me? Are you kidding? I'm looking for the next guy to do better than me.
Yeah.
Listen, I max my skills. They max their skills. That's the point. Each of us have, the old story about the talents. One had 10, one had 2, one had 1. Right. The key is not what you have. The question is, what are you going to do with what you've got?
Exactly.
And so that's really the beauty about it. And so when we can get our eyes off of ourselves and start looking to other people, then that's it. And that's that was part of the reason, even in writing the book, because I thought, my family, they really don't know.
Yeah.
And I thought, something? And actually it was one of my mentors, Bob Beal. He said, Denny, he said, all these years, this was after 40 years. He said, how is it that you developed this amazing business and team around the world? He said, what are the principles? What were the guidelines and concepts that you used that allowed you to create this? And I said, he said, jot some of them down. And I just started jotting things down off the top of my head. I ended up with like over 50 of them, and then I thought, wow. And then I kind of consolidated. And then he said, Denny, that's a book. And I thought, son of a gun. I always had, it was on my bucket list from 20 years ago to write a book, but it never crossed my imagination that I could actually do it, But something? It was very interesting because Bob followed one of those concepts that's so valuable. He didn't say I should. See? He said, Denny, you could write a book on that.
You could. Yes.
Could. And that's one of the key principles I've used throughout the years. Is I never say you should. I always say you could.
Yeah.
If I say you should, somebody's going to say, yeah, why should I?
Right.
And who are you to tell me what I should do?
Right. Yeah.
And if I say, hey, you could, they say, I could. And so now rather than invoke the question why, it invokes the question how. Right. And it opens the door for me to maybe be able to contribute something that might move them a little closer to something they want to accomplish, And so I think that's just such a big part.
That's great. There are so many principles in your book, and I love the title too, because it is maximizing you. It's all about the person that picks this up. Oh, it's for me. Oh, maximize you. So I just think that's great in going into that field. And you've had a lot of change in your life and a lot of progression. I mean, how old were you when you got married? Like you were like 60? I mean,
No. Yeah, I was 60 years old.
yeah.
And and a lot of people say, golly, Denny, I mean, seriously, I mean, did it take you that long to find the right one? And I said, are you
Yes.
kidding? Man, there were a lot of right ones. I mean, man,
Yes.
there were some right ones that would have been just unbelievable, right? But the
Yeah.
problem was
Yeah.
I wasn't the right one. Wasn't finding the right one. It
Oh,
was becoming the right one.
yes.
And
Yes.
when I became the right one, then the one came along,
Oh, that's
And
neat.
there it
That's
is.
neat.
It's just like say when the teacher's ready, the student arrives, or when the
Yes.
student is ready, the teacher arrives.
Right.
And when the guy's, ready to get married, the bride will come.
Yes. Yeah.
And she did.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. You know what, though? There's adjustments all the way through our life. I brought that up because you have gone through stages of adjusting too. And now you're going through a time of expanding and, all of those times of change, of transition, of, really what we end up doing is not forgetting what we're doing. We expand. That's kind of what I've done in the speaking area, in the writing books, because I still have my music going. I've got a huge publishing library, all of that going. And so expanding, but to be able to be far reaching, reach more people, to be able to expand what we're doing. So in that, you have continued, to grow through. And, when you were ready for each stage, then that's why I brought up the relationship, because each stage there's change, there's transition, but there's expansion in what you are doing.
Right.
So, and why have you, I mean, now you did the book. So, and then you've started kind of another, website, another kind of business of Maximize You. And what do you really want to do with that? Because that is, you're very successful in your business. I mean, it runs, you're extremely successful. So, but you still have it. But what will you be doing now in this new chapter? And how are you formulating that as, is it an expansion? Is it a separate business? What are you doing with that?
Yeah, it really is probably more just of an expansion. I've had so much fun doing what I've done. And I thought, maybe this would be a way, because, it's interesting when you look at certain strategies can be company specific, but principles and concepts, they're more, you might call them generally specific.
Yes.
In other words, a concept can apply to a variety of different situations. And so I've just kind of realized this, this could be an opportunity to expand my horizons and take what I've learned in these principles, because they apply to so many things. I mean, in our life, in our business, our social life, our family life, our marriage, they apply to all these different things. And so, for me, it was a way for the family to see, how I've done what I've done. Isn't it interesting? Because sometimes our family may be the last to know, what I mean?
I know, and they're the last to know, or even to ask, or
Exactly.
it's like, now I know you do all this stuff. What is it again? And they're,
Right.
It's interesting.
Right. So yeah, I just think, and it's one of those things, and it's interesting that because with all that's out there, and you see all these people that they have the book, and then they have this course, and then they have this course, and this course,
Right.
and that course, and you get this course here, and I'm thinking, I don't want that.
Yeah.
As I ask myself questions of a lot of my leaders who are going through different things, stuff like that, you've got to go through, okay, number one, what do I like about where I'm at? And what is it that I really want to accomplish here? I know, and that when you get involved with something, it can be all consuming.
Right.
My business was all consuming for many years. People say, have you ever thought about, getting married? And I said, if I had a free weekend, yeah, I'd think about it, because I was go. I was consumed with what I was doing. I mean, there was one year I literally traveled completely around the world 3 times.
Wow.
I mean, and it wasn't just around. I mean, it was going up here and then down here and like this. I mean, I probably put close to 200,000 miles in 1 year, And so, it was so consuming. And I'm thinking, I don't want that. I want to be able to take what I have. And I think that's part of the value of having the book and say, listen, here's the principles.
Yes.
Do what you want with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, people, with the tremendous success, and you got 250,000 plus closing in on 300,000 people, they say, you've got all these heroes, as you talk about,
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, yeah, but you got to you got to get the bigger picture here.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a lot of these heroes. But I said, if you were to add up all of the heroes, okay, out of 250,000 people, it's going to be about this much.
Right.
And, and so, when you look at that, what's that leave left? It leaves thousands and thousands and thousands of zeros. And listen, if I take credit for the heroes, I got to take credit for the zeros. And there's a lot more of those. So I don't want to take credit for those. Listen, I just want to be able to provide some principles that have been proven by giants in the industry, by people who have overcome the most amazing odds, overwhelming odds in situations and problems and circumstances, and have succeeded in their principles. Because the principle, they don't care what your background is. The principles don't care what age you are. Principles don't care what abilities you have. Principles work. Yes. And that's what I discovered. You can be as dumb as a rock, but if you follow the principle has consequences. You just have to choose to follow the right principles. And that's where we fill our mind with the right stuff. Pretty soon, the mind begins to fill up with that stuff. And that's what we start thinking about. And when you start thinking about things often enough, you start doing them.
Right. As a mind thinketh, so he, where's that proverb? So now you mentioned, when I asked what's new, you mentioned that you are starting to ask yourself some of those questions that everybody else is asking it to grow or to start something new. And what are you finding out? Did you go through like some self-doubt, or did you go, what kind of, I'm sure this wasn't just like pop in your head all of a sudden go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to go. You talked a little bit about the book journey, thinking I could, that sort of thing. But what about expanding into, maybe some more live engagements or speaking or whatever you're doing?
Well, I think the first thing I learned is anytime I go away for a time of analysis and evaluation is that it's always easier to ask the questions than answer them.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
But it does. And you have to remind yourself, you have to go over these things because, again, we're always in the battle. Well, who do you think you are? You can't do this. And so the world wants to, say how much, tell you what you can't do rather than what you can do. And so it's just really evaluating those things and what do I really want? And it helps because it helps to simplify the process. And anytime we can simplify things, then it makes it easier to move forward. And so then it's just like I said. So I don't want to be a Tony Robbins. I don't want to be the Zig Ziglars or the Grant Cardones or all the ones that are out there these days. I don't want that. Are you kidding? And I think of that and I go, oh my gosh, no, I don't want that. But I do want to continue making an impact. And so when I look at some of these things, then I have to ask myself the question, okay, what do I need to know in order to do what I've got to do? And maintain my values, not compromise what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Right.
And so when I look at those things, then I say, okay, this is what I really want. And so it really does help simplify it. So how am I going to do that? Well, if I don't want to be going out, the 50 weeks a year,
Mm-mm.
If I want to reach 100,000 people, I go out 50 weeks a year. I only need 2,000 people, right? But if I want to reach the same 100,000, and I don't want to be out 50 weeks a year, I want to be out 25, then I just have to figure out how to speak to 4,000 instead of 2,000.
Exactly.
So right. You can condense so that you can consolidate.
Right.
And the resources are there. In today's world, listen, it's easier today than at any other time in history because we can just go click, Siri, tell me, you just speak the question and you're going to come up with 132 volumes of answers. So right. It's not like there's anything new or any secrets. There's no secret to success. A good friend of mine that I met at a seminar, he said there's only two problems. There's a knowing problem and a doing problem. Mm-hmm. That's it. And I thought, yeah, that's it. I just need to know what to do and then do what I know.
Right.
So the question is what do I need to know? And there's an infinite amount of material and information out there and people who are willing to help.
Yes.
I mean, my mentors, they're the reason I've accomplished what I have. They took their knowledge, skills, and time and energy and invested into my life. And this book and what I'm doing and what I've accomplished, it's their reward.
Right.
Yeah, I got to do it. I got to be involved, but it's their reward for what they, invested in me. And so that's what I want to do. I want to be able to invest in other people. That's the greatest joy.
Yes. And that is a great path of I think that's such a great focus. Many people want to do that when they're making a life change, thinking, I'd like to start giving. I have more resources. I have a lot of experience. And how do I do this? Finding the vehicle to be able to do it, doing your research, and just starting and getting going on that. I think that's a big deal, and not being held back by fear of what if this happens? What if, all of that?
What if it doesn't?
Yes, I know. But what if you never start?
Deb, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
One of my mentors, Bob's been worked with me for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And it's very interesting because he's written a book called Decade by Decade. And it's fascinating because, the first decade is all about security,
yes.
And then, the second decade is trying to figure out, who I am. Third decade is, in the 20s, we're trying to survive.
Right.
And how am I going to fit into this world, And then the 30s, that's the idea of, okay, I want to be successful. Right. And so we work real hard and we do everything we do and we become successful in the 30s. But then come the 40s, we're thinking, okay, I'm successful, but so what? What's the difference? What significance is there? And so we find our significance in the 40s. And then once we get the significance, the value of what we're doing, now we can develop our stride in the 50s. And this is where this halftime concept that you promoted, and I think so huge, we get our stride in our 60s, 50s, get the stride of our significance. And then in the 60s, and I never knew this until he laid this out to me, but the most powerful, impactful decade in a person's life is in their 60s. Yeah. Because they take their significance, they've developed the stride. Now they've got the strategy to make a greater impact. There's a greater increase in wealth, in difference in our 60s. And then in the 70s, you say, okay, I've got it, but what am I going to do with it? So now that's the succession. Who can we pass it on to? What kind of a legacy am I going to leave? And so that's part of the book. That's part of the speaking agenda now. Is I want to be able to let me leave what I've accumulated all these years, and hopefully somebody will take it and make it even better.
Yes, that's what we want. That's what we want. Not only for people that we are able to impact, for kids, for with families, with all of that, we want them to go far beyond. And I've told students for years, I said, I'd love you to pass me up. I mean, that's why, develop the love. I'd love you to pass me up. And no one really did, but that was the goal. Now I have a son that definitely, his abilities, if he had kept going, he would. It's just, but everybody has uniqueness too, because I have uniqueness. He doesn't. So there's just, everybody has their sort of unique space of, where we are at and what we can do and how we can help and encourage others. And I tell you, you have inspired so much just with your heart and your words here of just that sort of mission. And I think so much of what we do is caught, not just taught. You've got a lot of principles in your book.
That's one of them.
But so much, but so much. I mean, I've taught since 13 years of thing, but it's so much is caught. You get somebody's spark that they will learn for themselves. They'll go far beyond anything that you could actually teach. And, you could do a million courses and still be the same. But if you've caught that passion of learning for yourself, of growing, of exploring, you're going to go far beyond. And I think that sort of message that you have brought today, Dennis, is a wonderful one of just not being afraid. First of all, you are now at another time of your life. You're still growing, and wonderful that's happening. Getting a book out is like having a baby. I tell you what, getting these things out is work.
I had no idea.
Yes. Yeah. I could talk about that. I have another one coming out and I'm doing the audiobook. It's a lot of work, but it's so worth it. When you're done, you think, oh, there's another child, and hopefully that it will have impact. And I tell you, just like the albums I have on my wall, I've done so many projects, and they're calling cards. They're being able to give something to someone. And now, of course, with CDs, people download, they don't do as many CDs. So I end up sending them out and, those sort of things too, for a lot of things. But it's a little calling card, a little business card, a little like, oh, this is what I want to wish you. I want this sort of joy to add to your life, this sort of messaging. It's like your business card. And that's what these books do as well, because it's now, this is who Dennis is. This is the principle. This is what he's basing his life on. And I can see that. Oh, we can trust him now. So that's, but it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to get it out, but good for you. You had talked about this. Yes, it is.
Because as you go through those, and I know as you've written your books and even your musicals, I'm sure it's very similar. What you discover is you discover more about yourself, and it forces you to clarify what you're really thinking.
Yes.
And so that's where you're able to create that flow and the magic. But I tell you, and you got it on your wall there. The hero inside, and that's Isn't that what we want to do? Everybody's a hero to somebody.
Yes.
And we just need to point it out to them and help them to take advantage of it, because they have that opportunity to make a difference.
Yes. And you mentioned something today of simplicity. One of the hardest things to do creatively, it's a real creative concept, is to simplify and to simplify our message, to simplify your principles in a book, to simplify the actual message of the hero inside, or getting out of a roundabout, or the summit, whatever I'm talking about. But it is that simple message, yet is so profound if it's applicable.
Yeah.
So, Dennis, thanks so much for being with me today. And again, this is a bonus episode. Make sure, if you are listening, make sure that you look at the notes with the podcast or with the video that on YouTube, that, there'll be a link directly to the article, and you can see where to get Dennis's book and a little bit more about him. And and you can always get on my newsletter too. I've had it going for at least 20 years, probably 25. I don't know how many years now, but goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. You can always get sign up. It's free. And then, of course, Deborah Johnson speaker, DJ Works Music, and our podcast, womenathalftime.com. Plenty of websites, plenty of links. So, but again, Dennis, this has been such a pleasure to have you today, and such a privilege and such a joy for me to see because I remember when you were starting out and it was, it was work. You were working hard. And I'm just thrilled with where, how God has blessed you. First of all, you've put in the work, but just with, what you continue to give, it's a wonderful example. And I'm excited to see what the future holds. So
thank you, Deb.
Yeah.
Just a great joy. Thanks for the pleasure and the honor of being on your show and your podcast. And hopefully we have people get something from this one too.
Oh, I'm sure they will. So thanks again, Dennis. And for everyone tuning in, I will look forward to being with you again next time. And so bye for now.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.